Guess we're 30 seconds.
30,
30 seconds
30.
to be exact.
Well, that clock's getting. Ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the March 12th City Council meeting, City of Lake Stevens. And we are live on Zoom. This meeting will also be on our YouTube channel at a later date, recorded. So certainly opportunities to review what we're doing. So with that, I'd like everybody to stand and start the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk Chellen, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Shipman. Present. Councilmember Jorstad. Present. Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Taggett.
Present. Should it be noted that Mayor Gailey is absent tonight?
Sure. I will note that.
Great. And with that, I'll defer to the Council Vice President, Councilmember Donahue, for the approval of the agenda.
Thank you. So if everyone has had a chance to review the agenda, is there anyone with any additions, corrections, comments?
Move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mr. President, you have an agenda.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, guest business tonight, we have an introduction of Public Works crew members, Sawyer Luna and Anthony Virarella. Okay, and we have Curtis Clifton here to introduce those folks.
Good evening, Council President, Council. It is my honor to introduce our two newest members to the operations crew of Public Works. First, we have Anthony Villarreal. Anthony was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. He started his career in the public sector in 2015 with the city of Arlington, home of the Texas Rangers, and then continued with the city of Fort Worth. He moved to Washington State in 2022 and has since worked for the city of Bellevue and now joins us here at the city of Lake Stevens. Outside of work, Anthony loves to spend time with his family and collects sports memorabilia. Please join me in welcoming Anthony.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Next, we have Sawyer Luna. Sawyer is a recent graduate of Snohomish High School. While in school, he worked on a farm, running tractors and various equipment, moving cattle, building and mending fences. In his spare time, he enjoys riding his dirt bikes and fishing. Sawyer is thankful to be a part of the Public Works team here in Lake Stevens and is hoping to learn as much as he can to grow and make this his career. Welcome, Sawyer.
Next up on our agenda, I would call Chief Bezizos forward. We have an introduction of a new police records specialist.
Thank you, Council President, Council. I am honored to introduce Katie. I'd like to introduce her as Katie Byram. Katie was born and raised in Washington and currently resides in Lake Stevens with her two sons who are in the back and her husband, Trevor. Katie graduated from Woodinville High School in 2009 and then went to Pima Medical Institute. After graduating, she went on to spend the last 13 years in the dental service. She loves helping people and she has wanted to be a bigger part of her community. So she's excited and honored to be part of the Lake Stevens Police Department. We are very excited to have her. She has brought a lot of joy just in the first few days. Everybody's laughing and getting along. And she is really fitting in with our records people. And you guys know how much they're struggling right now with all the requests. But we're so glad to have you. And now you get to introduce all your families.
My stepmother Jolie has been with me since I was 4, my dad Kyle, my son Kaden, my mom and her significant other Billy and Debbie, my sister Jamie, my grandpa Chip, my grandma John, my uncle.
Thank you. I'll have Council President Peter Sagan give the oath of office for the Lake Stevens Police Chief. Yeah, just go ahead and step forward. You go ahead.
Congratulations.
Wow.
So if you would raise your right hand. I,
I,
Katie Bynum,
Katie Fire,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
and defend the Constitution and laws
and defend the Constitution and laws
of the United States, the Constitution and laws
Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington,
the state of Washington,
the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
and the mission and regulations of the Lake Stevens Police Department,
of the Lake Stevens Police Department,
and that I will faithfully
and faithfully
and impartially perform
and impartially perform
and discharge the duties
and discharge the duties
as a Lake Stevens Police Record Specialist
as the Lake Stevens Police Record Specialist
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability.
to the best of my
All right, great. Congratulations.
This is just, now you got to walk the gauntlet and say hi. I got to tell you a little story that was kind of funny. Is we got introduced to the family today. I was a Washington State Trooper where I had a famous actor, we won't say his name, come up behind me, tailgate me, cut me off, and then started speeding. And so I wrote him a ticket. He was on his way back from getting his braces down here in Washington because he was doing a film up in Canada. And the lady right here was the one who was doing his braces. So we're all connected, right? Thank you. Yeah, and a bad violator. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chief. And if you folks would like to stay, or you could certainly leave and go party or whatever you want to do. But, we have
I'm out of here.
we have a presentation from the Port of Everett.
Hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. Okay. I won't take it personal. I wish my family came out and like that. That's pretty impressive. So they're probably going to dinner. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm Lisa Lefebvre. I'm the CEO at the Port of Everett. Very happy to be here tonight. Actually, I was just talking to my husband and kids, and my son is actually coming to his 5th grade camp out in Lake Stevens starting tomorrow. And then I have to pick him up on Thursday because he's got a state basketball tournament. And I'm like, I could have timed that better. So I'm here tonight to just talk to you guys a little bit about our boundary enlargement measure, kind of a little bit about the port, what it is, why am I here, why should you care, and all of those details. So I'll kind of go through. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we go. I would love this to be informal. If not, feel free to hammer me at the end. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. So a little bit about the Port of Everett. I guess for us, we are the 3rd largest seaport in the state of Washington. We're known in the international community as the Port of Boeing, and we serve as a home port to Naval Station Everett, which I know is a critical community for you guys here in Lake Stevens. Recently, the port's been investing significant money in our seaport and recently received strategic seaport designation. So now we're one of only 18 seaports in the entire nation that can handle massive military mobilizations and demobilizations. And that was a strategic effort to be able to better support our Navy and armed forces. I like to say the Port of Everett is small but mighty. We are not a tonnage port. We are a value port. So everything that comes through the port is high value, oversized. So military equipment, airplane parts, boats, electrical transformers that keep the lights on, excavators, tractors, sometimes autos, those kinds of things. So that's our international seaport. We're the only global gateway in Snohomish County. Then we have a real estate division. It's about 3,600 acres, give or take, the largest property of which is Jetty Island. I don't know how many of you guys have been to Jetty Island, but we use the jetty for river maintenance. So we are the local sponsor for Snohomish, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we dredge in partnership with the Corps to make sure that the river stays navigable. And then also we beneficially dispose that material onto the jetty. So it helps navigation, but then also creates a beach, which is nice. We also have a significant amount of industrial real estate and working on a big mixed use commercial redevelopment with Waterfront Place, which I'm sure if you guys have been down to the Everett waterfront, you can see some of the construction going on there. Almost everything that we've touched, given Everett's the mill town and Mukilteo, really all of Snohomish County, everything's contaminated. So we've cleaned up about 250 acres of contaminated debris. And we essentially go in, we clean up the material. And as we're cleaning it up, we crack into the ground once and we put in all the infrastructure to promote economic development on the land and restore it to job creating use. And then our third business line is our marina. So we do operate the largest marina on the West Coast. It's about 2,300 slips. We have a 13-lane boat launch. We have guest moorage actually in Mukilteo. A lot of people don't know that. And we do a lot of partnerships on environmental stewardship. We just provided some dredge material to Kayak Point, do some different beach restorations, and just opened a brand new 350-acre wetland mitigation bank not too far from here that's been helping with the salmon. So that's a very high-level overview. There's a lot more stuff that we do, but that's kind of the high level. Next slide. They're really excited. So when people hear port, they go, well, I don't have the Navy by me. I don't have the seaport and the cranes by me. I don't have the marina by me. What's a port? And so I like to describe a port as people, opportunity, recreation, transportation, and sustainability. We have multiple lines of effort. There's a saying in the industry, once you've seen one port, you've seen one port. And that is very true for us in this area. Next slide. So kind of why am I here? And what is this all about? So in 1911, the state legislature created the Port Districts Act. Throughout the nation, I actually serve on the American Association of Port Authorities, which is an international organization. And every port around the nation, they look different. Their governance structure is different. So, for example, in Georgia, it's a state port authority. California, they're part of their county. Massachusetts is state. We are special purpose district. And so in 1911, ports were created as special purpose districts to be able to essentially ensure that the private industry didn't control all of the trade and waterways. That was the primary focus. And then also to be able to capture economic opportunities. So our authorities are pretty broad. I don't know. Can anyone guess how many ports we have in Washington State?
Well,
75.
Yes, 75. Good job. We have the largest port system in the nation, and they all look different and they all mirror the communities in which they operate. So Walla Walla, they do industrial real estate for wine incubation. It's kind of cool. We are maritime, aerospace, Navy, recreation, water, industrial development. other duties as assigned, as I like to say, whatever's happening in Snohomish County. And it is the fastest growing county in the state right now. So the Port of Everett was the first port created under the Port Districts Act, the seventh port created under the Port Districts Act. And for the longest time, I've been at the port almost 20 years, and we couldn't figure out why the port was created the way it was. Because honestly, the boundaries make no sense. It's bound by the Snohomish River to the east, and then Hat Island to the west, and a little bit of Priest Point. Doesn't take in all of City Everett, doesn't take in all of Mukilteo. So as part of this process, we started digging into it. And what we found was on June 8th, 1918, the citizens of Snohomish County put this measure out for a county-wide Port of Everett, out for a vote. They were trying to take advantage of World War I activities. And so it went out, it failed by 20 votes, a very small margin. It needs a 50% majority plus one, failed by a very small margin. So instead of, kind of regrouping and then, sending it back out the same way, they looked at the precincts and the townships that overwhelmingly approved it, essentially gerrymandered the boundaries, threw it out the very next month, July 13th, 1918, passed overwhelmingly. Port was created. War ended as soon as the port was created with the armistice. And the very first thing the port did was build the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal, actually. So that's kind of the history of how our boundaries don't make a lot of sense, is because they weren't designed to make sense. We are the largest port in the state that is not countywide, and I'll go through a little bit more details on that. I know you had this in your packet, so I'm not going to go through our history, but you can just see how it's changed. One of the things that differentiates ports from general purpose governments like cities and counties is our economic development tools. There is a lot of projects and programs that we can offer that are not offered by cities or other municipalities. One example is our foreign trade zone capabilities. And with all the nationwide talks on tariffs and trade and all of that, that's actually really attractive to business recruitment, is how do you bring these goods in and not have to pay tariffs on them, so that we can keep things competitive. So that's just one example of a tool that the port has. But our authorities are pretty broad. I've told folks that, someone hasn't come to me with a program or a project that the RCW didn't support the port's partnership in some way. Next slide. So this is the boundaries. We are governed by 3 port commissioners elected to 6-year terms. They hire one person, and that would be me. And then I hire and operate the port. Next slide. So we are we're a quasi-public private organization, special purpose. So we do have a small taxing authority. We actually are the smallest taxing district in the county. It's about 18 cents a thousand. So to put that in perspective, it's about $100 a year that current port district taxpayers pay. The difference between the port and other entities is that our taxes go straight back into the ground, straight back into the community. None of our taxes are used to pay my salary, my team's salary, run our operations. It all goes back into capital. It's just that's how ports function. So for every, $1, we can invest 12 back into the community. Next slide. Yeah. And again. Okay. So here is the countywide port. So we are, Olympia, Seattle, Tacoma, Bellingham, Grays Harbor, all countywide ports. And, why that makes a difference is that we're limited. We are statutorily not allowed to do business outside our boundaries. So for example, if you had a project that would be a perfect fit for the port, and you said, hey, Lisa, I want you to come and partner with us and do X, Y, and Z and invest some resources, we couldn't do that right now because it's not within our district. Alternatively as well is if you said, hey, I got a business that wants to come to our industrial park and they need foreign trade capabilities. We can't authorize that because it's outside our boundaries. So there's a lot of things that we are limited on because of the size of our boundary. Taxes aside, it's just even just the tools that we have to offer cities outside of that. Next slide. So how did this come up? Why now? Port turned 2018, and the commission, this has been talked about for years. Ever since I started, I'm kind of the type of person, it's like, okay, well, let's just stop talking about stuff. It's either a yes or a no, or we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. So we put in our strategic plan that we were going to do an assessment to say, hey, does this make sense? What's the legal framework? This has never been done before. This would be historic. What does it look like? And so we went through that process. Next slide. And we started doing outreach. So from 2018 on, we've been looking at this, what is the legal framework? What does it take? What are people's interests? What do the cities want? What does the community want? How does this all work? And so we've been kind of chipping away through that. And it's actually very complex. Literally had to make flowcharts because this hasn't been done before. If the Port of Everett were created today, we would not be allowed to legally be created anything less than countywide. So it's kind of interesting. Next slide. So as you can imagine, it is not inexpensive to put actually, you guys probably know very well. It's not inexpensive to put a ballot measure out for a vote. So before I made a recommendation to my commission, I wanted to make sure there was at least enough interest to justify the public expenditure, or really the port expenditure, because this is considered operating, to make this investment. And so we hired a third party and did a community assessment survey. It was about 1,500 people that responded. Interestingly, that's how many people approved the Port District in 1918. So I thought that was kind of ironic. Most of them were residents. About 18% were businesses. And as you can see, a large portion, almost overwhelmingly large portion, own their own home. We focused all of the outreach and targeting of the survey outside the Port District. So this is in what would be the enlarged area. Next slide. Except for business, there's some overlap with the business because we couldn't break that out. We want to try to get an understanding of people's familiarity with the port. How often do they go? What do they go for? And essentially what we found is most people go to the port, multiple times a year and at least annually for whatever reason. Oh yeah, that's good. Yep. I can talk faster. One thing that they said that was interesting as our pollster is that we asked people to rank 1 to 10, the top priority on these lines of effort. And these are really our lines of effort for the port, job creation, recreation, environmental stewardship. We do a huge amount of education for the students and training and so forth like that. And so it was interesting because when people filled this out, there's always someone that's like, oh, that's not important. I'm going to give it a 1. Or, I don't really care about that. I'm going to give it a 2. Overwhelmingly, the average was a 7 or above for the most part, which he said is uncommon to see, which shows that people are interested in these areas. Next slide. We tried to summarize main themes. People were really interested in quality of life. I call it quality of life, which is recreation, transportation, right? The faster you can get home to your families and enjoy quality of life, the better for everybody. And there's definitely a synergy there. One thing that was interesting is that habitat restoration, well, not interesting. That was a top priority, but river management, that was a top priority for folks. And that makes a lot of sense because, if the port were able to have a greater influence on the rivers, right now there's only two federal settling basins. There's one by the I-5 bridge and there's one down by the marina. Well, a lot of what causes a lot of the flooding is that there's not enough surge capacity because the river's silting in from development and a variety of other things. So being able to take that conversation to DC. So I'm going there actually on Monday to talk to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about plussing up our budget because the Port of Everett is considered a donor port. So we pay a huge amount of tax on the goods that come in based on the value because airplane parts are expensive. But we're a natural deep water harbor. So all the money that we collect goes to the Gulf ports or the river ports. So we're trying to keep that money in Snohomish County because we bring in a lot of that commerce. And there's more opportunity to help the river farther up. Next slide. So this is kind of where the rubber hit the road is, you know, what's the interest? Like if the port could help invest in your community, what's your level of interest given the survey that we did? And about 42% were either very interested or interested. The next big chunk were either unsure or neutral. And then I think about 16 or 17% were not interested. Next slide. So this is how it broke down based on people who responded. And so you can see, you know, Lake Stevens definitely had a very good turnout on the survey. And we've got some more details drilled down on the next slide. So this is a bit of an eye chart. And again, I'm not going to go through. We put this in just because even if it's not for the port enlargement ballot measure, it might be helpful to you as just constituent feedback that we got. But you can see that there's an interest for sure in Lake Stevens, a lot of concern around the trestle. I actually was so surprised. I left super early thinking trestle's going to be a parking lot. And I got here pretty early, actually. So I was impressed. I don't know what's going on, but that is an issue. Next slide. So key takeaways was that there was enough interest for me to decide to make a recommendation to the board. So, sorry, next slide. In December, I recommended to the board that we send this out to the county council to consider putting it on the ballot measure. The commission unanimously approved it. That ballot measure was sent to the county council. And actually, just this morning, the county council unanimously approved to put this on the ballot measure for August. Next slide. This would be the area. There is a Port of Edmonds, and they are interested in, they thought when they were created that they were the city limits, but they weren't. And so I think they want to make sure that they preserve that. So we excluded Edmonds city limits and the district, which is why you see the map the way you do. Next slide. So now that the commission has passed it, it's gone to the county council. They've approved it. It will go to a vote of the people on August 6th this year. If approved, it has to pass by 50% plus one. And if approved, the enlargement would take effect immediately. And then the port would have to immediately go and redistrict to the new boundaries and put a new ballot measure out, the very following ballot measure, to have the community decide if they want 3 members or 5 districts, or 3 districts and 2 at large. Now, if we were to go countywide, not including Edmonds, that 5-member commission would be automatic. But because Edmonds is carved out, it has to go back to the people again. So this is where the flow chart came in. Next slide. So the community would get to decide what what kind of governance structure they would want if this were to be approved. It's kind of interesting because we do have 3 elected commissioners. The way it would work is they would stagger the new commissioners in if it was approved for 5. I think it's whoever gets the highest votes gets the 4-year term and then, or the 6-year term, and whoever gets the second highest gets the 4-year. So it's kind of interesting to how it all works out. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. And so and from just a policy standpoint, we currently have our strategic plan. The very first thing, if this were to be approved, would be to do a rather large outreach we've already talked to all the cities in Snohomish County, and the county, leadership and so forth, but we would actually go back out, to all the cities, and expanded area and update our strategic plan to make sure that what the port's doing is in alignment with the community's expectations of a enlargement that they just had authorized if they choose to do so. We will be having about 6 educational informational sessions on this. One of them will be in Lake Stevens. I don't know the date, but we're going to try to get out to the community just so that they can ask questions about, what does it mean for me? And so we'll be doing that throughout the spring. So that's the initiative. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
How does Payne Field fit into all this? Typically ports have airports and so forth, but Payne Field is owned by Snohomish County. So how does that work?
Well, it's one of these funny, vicious cycles. So because the port was created the way it was and different than Seattle and Tacoma, we didn't have the resources after World War II to buy the airport. It was offered to the port first. So the way the federal donation tier works is ports are the highest on the tier. But we didn't have the resources to buy it. So the county bought it. So that's why county has the airport.
But there's no talk of putting the airport underneath the Port Commission, even
No.
though they be within the boundaries?
That hasn't come up. And so what I've told the county with respect to the airport is this enlargement wouldn't change any of our authorities. It doesn't change any of our current land holdings or any of our operations, but it serves as a tool that if the county were to want our help with the airport, or if Arlington were to want our help with their airport, or you name it, we would be able to help. Right now, we can't. We can't even consider it.
Okay.
Yeah, because actually half the airport is in the Port District. That was another challenge of it too.
Okay. Does anyone questions?
Just to clarify what you said, if I'm reading this right, it does increase your taxing district though, correct? There would be additional taxes.
It does.
Okay.
Well, it would be a new assessment for the enlarged area. Our current district already, it does that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And just one of the biggest benefits, candidly, is a port with all of the, major infrastructure investments that we have. So we have about a $83 million budget right now. Only about 6% of our budget comes from the taxes, and we invest over 37 million back into capital. So our operations actually invest way more money in capital than our tax base. This would just further expand that. So give us more resources to invest in other areas.
What was that ratio? You said 1 to 12 or something?
It's 1 to 12. Yeah. So for every dollar we have, we can invest 12.
Gotcha.
And which ties back to our bonding capacity. And I'm sure you all are very well aware. A lot of people you say bonding capacity, their eyes roll back, but because our district is so small, even though, taxes aside, we don't have the bonding capacity to do economic development outside our district with the boundaries the way they are, even if it was a revenue generator.
Just curious, how many of the other 14 county ports have, or 13, I guess, have 3 or 5 person commissions?
I think almost all of them have 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. But interestingly, so Seattle and Tacoma, because they were created originally, and actually I think Bellingham and Olympia as well, because they were created early on countywide, they're at large. That option is not available as far as I know for an expansion. Yeah.
I have another question. The existing, I mean, the taxing is based on parcels, right? Assessed valuation of parcels.
Exactly.
And right now you're essentially Everett, essentially, with some modifications. So I don't know the exact number of parcels in the county, but it would seem to me you're probably 6, 7, 8 times increasing the basis for taxes. So what is the economic plan with this money coming in? And, you know, where is the port going to go, I guess?
Well, and that's why I don't know quite yet. There's a lot of opportunities. I mean, the very first thing that we could do that's easy is expand our existing programs countywide. So we do transportation grants. We gave the city $400,000 for a matching grant funds for a route that they were doing. We do environmental grants. We just gave the city of Mukilteo $200,000 to do a daylighting of their Japanese Gulch restoration. We do small business grants. We do a ton of tourism grants. We do a lot of educational partnerships. So those are some of the things that we could do immediately just because we have all the programs in place. The big thing would be to update our strategic plan, come back out and say, where are the core alignments of the community and where can we invest? Transportation seems to be a top one. Brownfield redevelopment. There's a lot of brownfield parcels that need redevelopment or access to utilities and broadband. Broadband authority was just added to the port. So there's quite a bit of opportunities. Grade crossings, that's a big one that has been a focus in certain areas, trying to get access to all this federal money. The ports have a ton of resources because nationwide, ports are structured different. And so, for example, Port of Humboldt Bay just got $450 million to put into their community for offshore wind. So there's lots of money to be had right now. So it's really just identifying those key projects that have countywide benefit and be able to focus on that.
So I think one of the things piggyback on Councilman Petershig, so if your budget goes from 83 million to roughly 500 million, $500 million, I mean, identifying, you know, what capital projects, like what's going to do with that. I mean, we did a transportation benefit district, which is like 5% of what you're doing for requesting. So, you know, but putting those projects out there and saying, hey, this is what would be the benefit for that might, I know for me as someone that would be voting on that, I would want to see
Projects.
you know, projects or what the return is on that. Because if someone just says, hey, I'm gonna get another tax on my bill, they might be reluctant to accept that increase in taxation.
So I will tell you, I wish it would be 500 million. That is not going to be even close. We estimate somewhere in the $30 million range. Right now we're at 5. So we're a very, very small taxing district. A large portion, over 50 million of that 83 is our operations. So it's a lot more than we have to work with now, but it's not hundreds of millions of dollars.
I misunderstood what you were saying then. I thought you had said of your $83 million budget, you had about $37 million that came in from taxing.
Oh, no, that's our capital program,
Oh,
our annual capital program. So 5 million of it is taxes. The rest is our operations investing back in. So we only get $5 million a year in taxes. And actually right now we've got about 7.5 million that we put out every year just in environmental.
My numbers are off, so.
I liked your numbers better.
Any other questions?
No, this has been really informative. I appreciate you taking the time to kind of lay this out for us.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any questions or if the community has any questions, you guys have my contact information. I'm happy to answer anything that you have. I'd love to be able to come up and say, you know, if you do this, then we will build that. But I don't want to be presumptive because we can't say we're going to do something if we don't have the authority to do it. But I think that's why the history of the port and the things that we've built and the things that we've done in our district are good examples of things that we could do in your city, in your community. And it gives you a flavor of what we can do. And like I said, we're essentially somewhat of a development company. We put that money back in the community and create jobs. So it's just all money that would just go right back into infrastructure.
Lisa, I just want to say also for anyone listening, she did her entire presentation without any notes. And so I really appreciate your depth of knowledge and just being able to present all the information just spontaneously. That says a lot about you and your understanding and knowledge of what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so
Lisa.
much. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So next on the agenda, citizen comments. Kelly, do we have any green sheets or
No.
anyone online that is wanting to speak?
No green sheets. I do see a couple people online. So if you do want to speak to the council, if you can raise your digital hand, I can let you into the meeting. No hands
No one in the audience.
and nobody in the audience?
No. Maybe not. Okay,
Okay.
all right,
no
great. Let's move along. Council Vice President Donahue.
Yes, so that brings us to council business. I'll go ahead and start with myself just because I have nothing to report tonight, and then I'll change it up and go ahead and start with Councilmember Tagent.
I attended Parks Board yesterday evening. They elected a new chairperson. They voted to start the 20th Street ballpark naming. So just to get that started moving forward for a name for that. And looks like we still have erosion going on down here, and they're looking at some easy maybe fixes for that to help stop the erosion without spending a ton of money. And a bunch of other little things about parks and stuff, but those are the main topics.
Councilmember Ewing.
Attended the Bayview Trail open house last Thursday, put on by the city of Marysville. Just really impressed with our parks people and the work that they put in there, and also the collaboration between City of Lake Stevens and City of Marysville was very easy to see in talking to. I mean, they had several of their staff there, the consultants, big turnout from the citizens. The mayor was there and other folks supporting that. So a special thank you to Jill Meese, who put a lot of hard work into that. And I'm really excited. Just in disclosure, the trail is about a half mile from my house. So there was some special interest personally for that.
And Councilmember Dorset.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Shipman.
Yesterday I attended the Senior Center Board meeting, and to date, they have just the first few months, we've got 244 total participants. I had mentioned they need 500 to qualify for a pretty significant grant through the county. And one thing they pointed out is the largest numbers I'm looking here, the 244, 184 was in January. So those are their current members that just signed up again. Membership is only $30. You get discounted on all the things and places that they go. If you're curious about where they go, because I could go on, they've got so many things going on. Their website is www.lakestevensseniorscenter.com. A lot of the things they do provide transportation. So if you have limited mobility or, have a hard time driving, they do provide transportation. To clarify, last time I spoke, I was asked about the age. It is 55 plus to count in the 500. But everyone is welcome. They've got some Easter things coming up and grandkids are coming. So any age is welcome to come to the senior center, but to count in that number that their goal was on for the grant, that's 55 and plus. And you just have to come to one event. You don't have to join or anything. Like just go one event and you count as a head count. So anyone that's interested in helping out the senior center that's 55 or older, you just have to go to one thing, and that's one step closer to them getting this grant. I wanted to mention there were this last month 459 volunteer hours. They served 443 meals. Their hottest participations, definitely bingo. That's their most popular event is bingo. But they do all kinds of things. They, have exercise, they have hand and foot care, they do massage. They just had a privacy screen donated so that if you need your feet attended to or something like that, you can have some privacy from other people there. But they're really a service to our seniors, and you don't have to be a Lake Stevens resident. Anyone in the county can go. And so I would encourage everyone to do so. They also collect revenue by renting it out. So if you don't need a super large space, but you need a place that needs a kitchen, they've got a pretty nice sized kitchen. Something to consider as well to help them generate some revenue. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Daughtry.
Speaking of transportation, I went to the Community Transit Board of Directors meeting, and something of import is the Orange Line BRT route will be opening on March 30th. That starts at McCollum Park and goes all the way to Edmonds College Transit Center. There'll be some other bus lines that are that feed that particular line that'll be coming into production on the 30th as well. And then on that same day, if you want to attend a block party for the Orange Line, that will be at the Edmonds College. Several different organizations will be there, including the City of Linwood, Boys and Girls Club, Orca. If you do attend there, you will get an Orca card. It's a promotional Orca card. It's free for buses and BRT and for the all of April. And then all you have to do is load some money onto it and you have your Orca card after that. So that's what's going on in community transit. We've been working on the Orange Line for 3 years and we're getting ready to launch it. So guess where I'm going to be on the 30th.
Thank you. Council President Piusagan.
Yes, I attended the Bayview Trail Open House also, and it was just good attendance there. Nice to see the two staffs working together. It seems like a very positive experience there. So would encourage that to move forward. Also, the museum, I attended their board meeting. They're going to be having, and Jerry, maybe you could correct me, they're going to be having a huge garage sale up at the senior center, either April 13th or the 20th. Yeah. Okay, there will be more to come on that, but that's part of their fundraising efforts for the new museum. Past council member Dickinson is kind of heading that up, so applauds to her for doing that. So she's really running with it. So anyway, so with that, I think that's all. We don't have anything, Mayor Gailey passing along.
Did you have anything?
So, okay. All right, city department report. Frank Reinhardt, want to step up to the podium and update us on our TBP program. Almost said TBD.
I'm still correcting myself on that acronym change. So as City Council requested of me in December, I'm returning to give you a first quarter update on the program that's here. I'm going to do my best to keep this one concise because I fear that the next two aren't going to be. Go ahead, next slide, please. No worries. I've thrown her because it's only a 5-slide presentation. So the two major topics that I want to describe to you tonight are the summary of current project activity that's going on and been going on for the past few months. And then kind of turn to the external funding efforts because that's a topic that's kind of popped into our lap here starting now and for the next 3 months. And then I'll take any questions that the City Council has. Next slide, please. So the active projects that we have going, it's pretty similar to what you saw in December. The Main Street Improvements Project is completing final design steps. It's completing the right-of-way acquisitions. Principally the temporary, although there is some permanent negotiations that we are wrapping up, and looking now at the final state and federal approvals. We need those in place in order to obligate the federal grant funds for construction by June. So there's a lot of work that's going into trying to keep to that time frame. The other project that is now kicking off, and in fact, I brought for your consideration the consultant agreement for the design of that project is the Main Street Roundabout project. So we went through a process following the federal requirements of advertising. We received 2 submittals, 2 candidate teams expressed interest in it. Because of the federal process, we interviewed both candidate teams. We picked a preferred consultant and then spent about a month batting around the scope and the fee to kind of reach an agreement and understanding of the mutual goals that we all have. So that's what you see represented here. Once we execute that agreement, we'll be off and running as fast as we can on that one, because the federal permitting process has only gotten more burdensome here as time has gone on. And we want to make sure that we get our ducks in a row to put our best foot forward when we submit for our federal permitting. The 91st Avenue sidewalk or pedestrian bicycle improvements project, which is 2 of this segment out of the 20 sidewalk segments that we've kind of grouped together. So this is the project that's putting in a pedestrian bicycle path between Marketplace and 8th Street on 91st Avenue Southeast. That is in design right now. They've actually put together a couple preferred layouts. I wanted to take advantage of kind of this first project to look at the pros and cons of the traditional bike lane at street grade, curb, sidewalk profile, as opposed to the curb and then the shared use path profile is similar to what we did on South Lake Shore Drive. That I'm taking a look right now to see kind of where does the balance of pros and cons live there in the way of cost, in the way of right-of-way acquisition, in the way of impact to people's yards, and in the way of accessibility, especially in a street like 91st, where we are kind of stringing together segmental pedestrian improvements that are already out there. Right now, our city engineer is putting together the 2024 list of streets for the pavement preservation program. That's still a work in progress right now, so I'll have more to say about that in 3 months. Next slide, please. So in addition to the active projects that are kicking off, there's a couple external funding efforts that we are also investing a fair amount of time now in. The first one, the Transportation Improvement Board recently indicated to us that they had money lying around. They wanted complete streets money spent, and they wanted it spent on a construction that we were committed to building this year. And I said 91st Avenue. So I put in that application last week. We hopefully will see a positive return on that and just start this effort of maximizing our funding opportunities for these projects as they come due for us. The other major opportunity, and it's one that I mentioned in December, is the WSDOT grant application notices went out here a few weeks ago. So that is going to be working on what we're working on for the spring. That's for the state fiscal year 2025 to 2027. So the way that works is you don't have the money in place until June of 2025. And then you have to spend it by 2027. It's a use or lose it at that point in time. So what we're doing right now, or what I'm doing right now, we have 2 programs that we can put in applications for. There's no reason you can't put in an application for both of these programs for the same project, except you're competing against yourself a little bit. But the 2 programs are the pedestrian bicycle program and the Safe Routes to Schools program. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm going through the TBP projects, particularly the ones that, as I showed you in December, are near term or fall generally within that time window, and seeing which ones jump out as being good candidates for one or the other or both programs. We probably will put in more than one application. There's no real reason not to, because the ideal here is for each of these programs to get these projects listed on the legislative priority list, because they'll fund as many projects as they can going down that list. So it behooves us to get on those priority lists. And that effort will be this spring, because the application deadline for both grant programs is towards the end of May. And so with that, any questions?
That all sounds exciting.
I appreciate the update. Keep us informed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Next on the agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? And can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Council
Second.
President,
Oh.
oh, I just wanted to talk about the
No,
workshop
we
next week
adjourned.
real quick.
Sorry.
Sorry. Please hold that real fast. Do you want me to go ahead and read the items? Or do you want to?
No, I got
Okay.
Can't do it.
Let's see if I can do any better. Still the paper clip.
You want to read through these, Kelly, or?
Oh, sure. Okay, so a couple of these things are tentative for the workshop next week, but I thought I'd mention them. Surface water fee rate study. Shannon's working on that. Barb's gonna have a bond closing memo, kind of explaining that to you guys. We'll have a presentation from Alliance for Affordable Housing and Housing Authority of Snohomish County. I hear they only need about 30 minutes. Barb is working on a financier end report and possibly a 24 budget amendment coming your way. So that is of today. That's it.
Okay, great. Now can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
I.